Am I the jerk? My ex is attending my best friend's wedding and I don't think I'll go. 2 years ago, I dated someone and discovered a little late into the relationship that he was abusive. He was mentally and psychologically abusive. He wanted a housewife who was perfect, pretty, and quiet. He would say that he did not love me if I refused to be intimate with him. When I finally decided to leave him, I had to block his number, his social media accounts, and even his email. Still, he created fake accounts to continue interacting with me and harassing my friends. It took nearly 6 months for him to stop. I thought I could finally move on. When I dated him, I had introduced him to my best friend and her fiancé. He and her fiancé hit it off. I found out that my ex continued his friendship with my friend and her fiancé. Later, I found out that he is attending their wedding. My friend refused me a +1 and made no guarantees that my ex would not have one, even though he was single when we had the conversation a few months ago. My boyfriend of just shy of 1 year cannot attend because she does not know him. He lives out of state, and I have tried to invite her to get together with us when he visited, but she has shown no interest. Then, I learned that not only is he attending the wedding, he is officiating it. I did not learn this from my friend, but from a girl at the bachelorette party, who I could tell realized late that she was not supposed to tell me. My friend was never going to tell me. I would have found out during the ceremony. His new girlfriend of 1 month, who looks eerily like me, is tagging my friend in posts online. So I have a hunch she will be at the wedding with my ex. I have known my friend since 7th grade, for 16 years now. We have been through a lot together. I considered her my best friend for years, but now I do not even want to attend her wedding. When I voice how uncomfortable I am with the situation, she tells me that I am trying to make the wedding all about me. Am I? I do not even think I will attend the wedding at this rate. It is next weekend. You are not the cause of this issue. It is beyond insulting that your friend would expect you to attend any wedding officiated by someone who was abusive towards you. Further, it is an enormous red flag that you are not allowed to have a +1 to give you comfort in the presence of your abuser. You deserve better. Move on from these horrible people and find friends who will respect you. Am I the jerk because my spouse took our child around a man I've never met? Am I the jerk because my husband took my infant daughter around some man I've never met? My husband took our 10-month-old daughter to his mother's yesterday to visit and was gone for 3 hours. He does this once a week and she loves visiting her grandma. Today his mother came over and asked me if I had met Nate. I said, "Who?" Apparently, when my husband went to her house yesterday, he had a man with him called Nate. My mother-in-law was uncomfortable with this man being there and understandably unhappy that her time with her son and grandchild was interrupted by this guy being there. They only visited her for an hour before leaving. My husband was gone with our child for over 3 hours. I've never even heard of someone called Nate, and we have a limited group of people we interact with where we live, as most of our friends live all over the country. My husband didn't mention anything to me about this guy. For some background, my husband is a recovering addict. He's had a few relapses, and while he does his best, he still leans more towards partying than I like. He loves our daughter very much, but he has struggled with the lifestyle change of having a baby. After some digging, my mother-in-law tells me that he met this guy recently down the street from where we live. We live on a cute little block in town, but it's not the best area and not far from a not great area of town. Again, he's never mentioned this guy to me. My mother-in-law says my husband and Nate talked about partying the entire time they were there. At this point, I'm pretty livid. He took our child and had her around a strange man I didn't know for several hours, just the 3 of them, and an hour at his mother's house. On top of it all, he didn't say a word about it and let me assume he was with his mother the entire time. The biggest issue to me is this is not safe. When I asked him about it, he yelled at me, saying I didn't want him to have any friends and that I am always getting on to him for everything. He stormed out and slammed the door, scaring our 2 dogs. Examples of me getting on to him include asking him not to drive our daughter after drinking a few beers, asking him to take his car and not mine when he goes out to have a drink with a friend I know. I guess my question here is, am I the antagonist for not wanting my husband to take our 10-month-old daughter somewhere with a man I have never met before? I am not a stay-at-home mom. I'm a nurse, so I work 3 days a week, and I'm also in a graduate program currently. The only people that take care of my daughter are my sister, her babysitter, or us. My dad, brother, and mother-in-law visit with her often. My father-in-law and his wife see her occasionally. Our out-of-town friends have seen her a few times, and some have yet to meet her, but we've been friends for more than 10 years, so I trust them all. My mother is deceased. You did nothing improper, but this situation looks like it has relapse written all over it. The real issue isn't just about baby's safety. It's about the husband lying and potentially using while taking care of the daughter. Bringing a dealer to the mother-in-law's place and lying about what he was doing are serious red flags. Keep the baby safe and address these concerns directly with him. Am I the jerk for reminding my ex that I'm only responsible for our children and not all of his kids? My ex-husband, 40-year-old male, and I, 35-year-old female, have 2 children together, a 12-year-old and an 11-year-old male. We divorced about 10 years ago because I felt like he regressed as a husband and a father during my second pregnancy, and he was even worse when our younger son was born. He was acting like a high school or college student, or a single man in his 20s with no kids. He spent more time with friends than with us. His friends were also treating me as if I were his mother and expecting me to pick him up from their houses when they needed to get on with their activities. He fought for 50% custody of our children, which he was not given, and for the first 2 or 3 years, he had them every other weekend and a 2-week period during the summer, as well as alternating holidays. He started being more involved and eventually did get 50% custody. At that time, I found out he got another woman pregnant and realized with 3 children, he needed to get his act together. He ended up with full custody of his 3rd child. Then he met his wife. They have 2 more children together. There are 2 children in her life, who she is also partially supporting. These 2 children do not live with them, but apparently, she and my ex-husband pay for their needs. My ex-husband and I started getting along better, but then his marriage became rocky. As his marriage worsened, he started treating me like a co-parent to all his children. He would bring his other children to custody exchanges and expect interactions between me and his other children. Then it was requests to babysit for him and his wife, which I never did. He would also make comments about our boys' old clothes at my house being sent to his house for his other children, and how we needed to ensure they had adequate clothing. I told him there was no we in that, and he said, of course, there is because we are co-parents. I said we are co-parents to our 2 children, but not his other children. He also requested that I have his other children in my home or take them out to eat with me and our children. Finally, it turned into back-to-school craziness. I bought supplies for the boys and he told me I had not bought nearly enough for everyone. I asked him what he meant by that, and he pointed out that what I bought would not be possible to share evenly among all 5 children. I told him we do not have 5 children, we have 2, and I bought those supplies for them. I told him I am responsible for our children, not his 3 others. I reminded him that he has a wife. They share 2 of those children and the other one is in their home, so it is up to them. He told me that they do not have a lot of money. I cut him off and told him that still did not make his children my responsibility. He said I could not possibly take care of just 2 of them, not when we are co-parenting and all 5 children live together 50% of the time. He said I should be a part of the community to help raise these children, and keeping my distance as I do is extremely cold. Am I the wrong one? You are not to blame, obviously. With his entitled attitude, he is clearly a poor role model. It won't be long until the kids wise up and want to stay with you full-time, especially since they're nearly at the age where their choice matters. Maybe it's time to reconsider the 50% custody arrangement if he can't take care of all 5 kids properly. Am I the jerk for not giving the role of father of the bride to both my dad and stepdad? My parents divorced when my siblings, 32-year-old brother, 30-year-old sister, 29-year-old brother, and I, 27-year-old sister, were young. I was a newborn when they separated. My dad never remarried but had 2 long-term relationships since then. One was when we were younger kids, and his current partner he met when we were in our teens. My mom and stepdad married when I was 5 years old. Our parents shared equal custody of my siblings and me. We were closer to our dad than our mom or stepdad. Dad was more of a nurturer, and we had a closer relationship with him. We still loved mom, but it wasn't the same. I believe my stepdad sometimes struggled to accept that we were so close to dad and not as close to mom or him. There were times we felt some jealousy and maybe even resentment about it. As an adult, I can somewhat understand, especially if he loved us like we were his. However, I also think it should always be a positive when kids have good biological parents, and a step-parent isn't needed to fill that role for a missing parent. It results in less trauma for the kids. When I was 10 years old, Dad was involved in a bad accident. For a year, we couldn't live with him because he was on life support and then in rehab working on recovery. During that year, my stepdad really tried to fill the role of only dad. He and mom already had a child together at this point, but he focused more on my siblings and me. He was really good to us, and I told him a few years ago that I appreciated that he didn't resent us being there all the time. However, he resented that. At the end of that year, he hadn't solidified himself as a dad to any of us. We all still called him by his first name. None of us saw him as more of a dad afterward. We weren't magically so much closer. Dad was still our number one. When most of my siblings were in college, but I was still at home, my stepdad became a little more angry and a lot more resentful of dad because dad was their go-to person to call. I also chose to live full-time with dad at that point. The problem today is that I am the last of my siblings getting married. My sister had dad as the only father of the bride for her wedding. Now I have asked just dad too. My stepdad was quiet about my sister's wedding, but he has spoken up this time. He told me he couldn't understand why I didn't ask them both. He said he did just as much as my dad, and for an entire year, he was the only father any of us had. My mom, who weighed in a couple of times, said I was so young when my stepdad and she got married that it made no sense to see him as less of a father. They told me that even if I asked now, it wouldn't hold the same genuine recognition and appreciation for my stepdad. However, my stepdad wanted me to know how thoughtless he considered my choice. Am I the asshole? In my opinion, you have done nothing wrong here. You should feel free to choose who you want to walk you down the aisle and not feel like you're putting dad against stepdad because you're not. Stepdad needs to accept your choice and be happy for you on your wedding day. If he feels any disappointment at not being asked to walk you down the aisle, he needs to either keep that to himself or share it only with your mom. with instructions not to share it with you. You did nothing wrong, and I hope you have a wonderful wedding. Am I the jerk for not giving away my grandparents' apartment to my aunt? I am a 26-year-old woman who will inherit half of my grandmother's apartment in the future, which has led to some family tension. My great-grandmother had a long-term rental apartment from the city after her home was bombed during World War II. My grandparents bought another apartment where my father and aunt grew up. After my grandfather's death, my father inherited the rental apartment and eventually bought it. I moved into the rental apartment after graduation and invested heavily in its renovation. Last year, my father passed away, and I inherited half of my grandparents' apartment, where my grandmother still lives. Recently, my aunt called and expressed concern that it is unfair for me to inherit both apartments, especially since her family will receive nothing. She suggested that I might consider giving up my future share of the apartment to her or her children. I was shocked by her call. I had a difficult childhood with family trauma, including my father's struggles with bipolar disorder and alcoholism, and my mother's lack of support. The properties represent my path to financial security, as I come from a poor country and chose a passion-driven career with low pay. I do not really know what will happen in the future when my grandmother passes away and the apartment will be empty. I am sure the same conversation will happen again with my aunt because she has not let it go yet. But I also understand where my aunt is coming from. She will inherit half an apartment after her parents and grandparents, while I will inherit 1.5 apartments in total. And I am not really sure what happened around the first apartment in the past. My father was really greedy, so it is possible that half of that apartment should be hers. However, it was a rented apartment, not a purchased one, so that also makes the situation more complicated. It makes me really anxious because I love my family, and I do not want to ruin the relationship that we have. However, I also do not want to give up the second apartment either because that would help me fulfill my dream and have a secure life. Your aunt is not entitled to your inheritance just because she wants more. Apartment A was bought by your father, so your aunt wasn't unfairly denied anything there. If she keeps pressing you, just tell her you'll think about it, but that pushiness isn't helping her case. You should decide what to do based on what's best for you, not because of her demands. Am I the jerk for banning my roommate from using my fridge? For context, I, a 24-year-old female, live on a student campus. My dorm is a corridor type 1, and it only has one kitchen per floor. Each kitchen has 2 fridges for common use, but there are not many people who keep their food in there because these fridges are tiny and there are approximately 70 tenants on each floor. Another reason is that whatever food you put in there is as good as gone because anyone can easily steal it. So, most of the tenants, including myself, have their own fridges in their rooms. I bought my fridge 5 years ago when I first moved to the campus and always let my roommates, of whom I had 4, use it as long as they could keep it in order. I never used to have any problems until I met my current roommate, a 25-year-old female. She is not much into cleaning, even after herself, which really annoys me, but I can put up with it as long as it does not concern my stuff. However, a couple of times I had to ask her to mind what she stocks in the fridge because some of her food started to rot and stink. This summer, after the semester was over, I went to my parents for 3 weeks and told her that if she were going to leave too, she needed to get rid of all her perishables in the fridge. I always do this with mine when I am going to be away for a long time, and she promised to do so. However, when I went back to the dorm a week ago, I found my fridge full of rotten vegetables and rotten raw meat. Although I threw this abomination away, it is still hard to get rid of the reek. The problem was that the roommate did not go away for the holidays. She was there in the room all the time and chose to turn my fridge into a mess. This was not the first time she had done it, but it was the most serious one, so I banned her from using my fridge. I said that from now on if I found any of her foods in it, I would throw it away or put it into the public fridge and would not be concerned about what would happen to it next. I guess she complained about it to our mutual friends because now I am getting angry messages saying that I am being cruel to her, and now she may be left without any food because she is afraid of it being stolen from the public fridge. So, am I the antagonist? Update. I want to thank you all so much for your support and your advice. I will start to try them today to get rid of the smell. As many of you wrote, it appears that what my roommate told our friends was not the truth. When I started receiving these messages, I felt so miserable and was so disturbed that I did not check it all out. One of the friends direct messaged me a screenshot of the chat where my roommate complained about me not letting her use my fridge just because of some smelly fish dish she had put there. By the way, there was no fish in the fridge unless it had already turned into liquid. So I sent them photos of what really was in the fridge at the time I went back to campus. As you can guess, most of the friends changed their minds. You also asked whether she could have ADHD or depression. As far as I know, she does not have either, at least she does not behave like that. All the things apart from cleaning, like cooking and washing her clothes, we do not have a washing machine there. She does often and relatively well. She has not been diagnosed, and anyway, we can only guess. Again, I want to thank you all for helping me sort this out. You really are the best. You are not in the wrong here. It's not her right to use your fridge, it's a privilege. If she needed to use it so badly, she should have respected it instead of treating it like a compost bin. If your friends really think you're in the wrong, maybe they should let her use their fridge or chip in for one. Losing friends over this just shows they weren't really good friends to begin with. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.